Commander Kern was barely a year old when Worf left for the Kittimer outpost. Kahlest resides in the old quarter of the First City, and Captain Picard gives the very first F around and find out, Star Trek style. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation. You may have heard of it. Season 3, Episode 17, Sins of the Father, written by Ronald D. Moore and W. Reed Moran, directed by Cirroc's buddy, Mr. Les Landau. We want to give a very special thanks to Dr. Brenda Custodio for sponsoring this episode. Thank you very much, Dr. Brenda Custodio. You are awesome. This was March 17th, 1990. Can you believe it? It's episode 317, which aired on the date 317. What luck. How are you today, Cirroc?
Oh, yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
The numerology is great. I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
So, first things first, I definitely thought of you often. Ryan thought of Cirroc when Kern showed up. Did you recognize your old self, old Jake Sisko?
Yeah, not right away. Not right away. It took me a second. At first I'm like, I know this actor. He's really tall. He was more lean at that time, just slimmer.
Very. And he looked so much younger.
He did. So it was a little bit difficult for me to recognize. In the beginning, I have to admit, I thought it was an actor named Leon, who's a pretty famous actor in the black movie world. And Leon was
not Leon Lett, right?
No, Leon wasn't Above the Rim. He was in the Five Heartbeats. He's one of the great. He had a great run at a certain point in time as one of the great black actors in the business, and I was a big fan of his. So at first, I thought it was Leon, and as I was watching, I started to look at the face and said, "That's not quite Leon." There's some aspects there, but it wasn't him. And that's when I really looked in. I said, "Is that Tony Todd? The Tony Todd?" So yeah, that was a pleasant surprise right there.
Yeah,
Tony Todd.
Leon. Everybody knows, of course, Leon Lett lives in Dallas Cowboys infamy. He had some problems in the playoffs way back in the day.
Oh yeah,
lineman.
Yeah.
But this episode is a very good and very popular and very famous episode. This is the first time we see the Klingon homeworld. That's why, was it Michael Piller gave big kudos to the production design and art department for really creating this. He gave big kudos to Marvin Rush, for really getting this lighting and these angles right, and really kind of creating the Klingon homeworld and making it iconic. What did you think overall, Cirroc, of like the look and the feel and the shots and all that? Because there was a lot to bite into.
Yeah, I picked up a lot of that too. From certain moments, for example, when Worf comes into his brother's quarters, he asks him, "Is your quarters just this comfortable?" or something to that effect, right?
Yeah.
Like, you little softy, the way he was. But in that moment, in that scene, he didn't have the lights on in his quarters, the brother, and so the lighting was really dark in his quarters, and he kind of sat down into a nice soft lighting that accentuated his outfit and put also the softness of his skin tone, so we were able to actually see his face. But there were moments in that shot where he was it was so dark you could barely see his face as he was walking around until he sat down into the light. So that immediately let me know, okay, they're setting a lighting trend for this character, right? There's a level of darkness and ominous mood that comes in for this particular character, which I thought was a nice touch for the brother. What was the brother's name?
Kern.
Kern, yeah.
If you'll recall, Kern came back later in Deep Space Nine when he asked his brother Worf to kill him. And there was
Yeah.
that big discussion about, Worf saying, this is our custom. I should be allowed to kill my brother, like Jack Kevorkian style, but with a mek'leth or something, some kind of Klingon knife. And
Hmm.
Sisko was like, that may be your custom, but it
Hmm.
is not our custom, which really created a very interesting discussion and thought process of, well, if a Klingon's custom is this, but they're in Federation space or they're on a Federation space station or he's a Federation Starfleet officer, do his customs override the customs of where he resides or where he works? So that was really interesting. But anyway, that was the same character. That was Kern a few
Hmm.
years later.
And interestingly enough, that same debate was brought up in this episode as well. There were
Yep.
moments there, for example, where Picard towards the end says, I will not allow an officer of my ship to be, you know, killed because of this rule. So all of a sudden, the umbrella changed. He went from, okay, I'm cool with the customs. I will play along. I'm his sidekick, to, all right, no, I'm the captain of the Enterprise. And now I'm putting a different hat on. And this hat is saying, you can't kill this guy. So I thought that was, they brought up this
Yeah.
going back and forth between respecting somebody's customs and also Federation supersedes my duty as a Federation officer supersedes whatever this custom is about to do.
And that is interesting. You're right, because that is a different situation in that if they were on a Federation ship, we could say, okay, that's the same as Deep Space Nine, where he says, not on my ship, not on my watch.
Mhm.
But Picard is out there amongst billions of
Yeah,
people that could beat him up and,
yeah.
and already don't like him or don't trust him. And he's going like, nope. And they're like, who the are you? What do you mean, nope? What do you mean, nope? I'm nope, not on my watch. They're like, get this clown out of here. But that was a pretty
Yeah,
ballsy
yeah.
move. By the way, the F around and find out. I can say it now, fuck around and find out. Didn't want to say it in the opening. Was one of the greatest lines ever written in Star Trek. And let's see if I can find it. Yes, the Duras says, keep your place, Picard. Picard says, this is my place. Very good.
Hmm. Very
Duras
good
says,
delivery.
you do not command here. And Picard says, I'm not here to command. And Duras then says, then you must be ready to fight, something Starfleet does not teach you. And Picard drops his whatever on the table, basically, and says,
Yeah,
you may test that assumption at your convenience. And I'm like, that's the very
yeah,
first FAFO, right?
yeah.
FAFO. You may test that assumption at your convenience. And everybody's like, wow, Picard, I didn't know you had it in you. But that was a very
Yeah,
fun line. Great line.
yeah. That was a fun line. Um, I'll also mention a lot of the times where I feel the writers do Picard justice as a character and
Mm-hmm.
paint a picture of him that seems admirable or honorable, or when he stands up for his crew or he stands up for a friend. I think that makes him look good. And
That was lacking in the first two seasons, right?
yes, yes, and so he looked arrogant in moments in the first two seasons. He looked like he had this entitlement or this kind of privilege that he was
Mm-hmm.
wielding around, as opposed to
Yeah, it was more like he was their adversary rather than he was defending them or taking their side against a foreign
yes,
adversary.
yes, yes. And when you paint him in that light, when he stands up for somebody like Worf and says, um, you know, I'll be at your side, you'll need the captain at your side. Those kinds of moments when he says, I'll be here for you, I'll stand by your side during trial. Your Chadish. whatever they called that, and he says, accepts that role. Um, those things paint Picard in a good light and make him look like somebody who you would want to emulate. It makes him look like somebody who puts other people first or willing to sacrifice himself for a partner, a friend, Riker, in this case, Worf, where he's willing to stick his neck out. And we just saw this, I think, in the last episode where we were talking with Renee Echeverria about some of the things that Picard was willing to do as far as getting court-martialed. Like he was willing to suffer whatever the penalty the admiral was going to levy upon him when he told Data to not follow the orders.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that moment?
This is an excellent scene.
Yeah, so he stood up for Data in that moment, right? And he was like, "No, I'm not going to let you give over your daughter or your child to Starfleet command for observation or whatnot." He overrode that order, put his neck on the line, showed us something that's honorable and respectable about Picard's character. And that's clever writing for me as a viewer. I can then root for Picard. I can then say, oh, okay, I like that guy. He's a good leader. He's willing to suffer the slings and arrow for his fellow man. He's willing to risk his own career for a cause that is what he believes to be a righteous cause, like in that case, Data's right to be a parent. And in this case, this was for Worf's honor, integrity, and for his father's kind of namesake. So again, he's standing up and putting himself on the line and willing to even risk, I guess, his life in this particular episode because he was threatened physically. So that shows me good character on Picard. That's good writing, and that's how you should write your captain. Your captain should be written in a way where the sympathy and compassion for his crew and his team he puts on the line, and he's willing to make that sacrifice.
Yeah, and just to take those compliments a couple steps further as well, it's one thing to be able to conceptualize this and say let's put Picard on the right side of whatever the battle is, rather than him being the adversary. He's doing these honorable things. But what really makes it work and makes it believable is great dialogue, and they're writing great dialogue. That's what makes it believable. Otherwise, it's a great attempt, but that's but they really see it through with excellent dialogue and believable dialogue. And then, of course, a lot of it is that it is Patrick Stewart too. You could tell he's given lines that he's more comfortable with now. He delivers these, I don't want to say in a more believable way, but when I'm watching him deliver these lines today, for example, they seem to fit and to flow and to be more natural with him and who he is than the ones in the first season. The first season being super rigid. Okay, he's playing it off. He's working it. He's acting it. That's cool. That's great. But these seem to really be natural fits for him. I feel like this is they're comfortable lines that he can do a lot with. And so just big kudos and lots of flowers to the writers for that. I thought that was very
Absolutely.
well done. And they're doing it a lot this third season.
And one other thing that needs to be kind of highlighted is these guest stars in this episode were fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Tony Todd comes on right away as Kern, and you could feel his ominous presence right away. He's like, I'm in control. I'm in charge. I'm the number one. Even there were looks like Riker's like, I'll sit over here in the Troy seat if you don't mind.
In the submissive seat. Talk about my feelings.
He had that look where it was like, I see who the boss is around here. And even when he approached him in that elevator scene or in that scene, he kind of was like, hey, can I offer you a suggestion? And I thought, again, Tony Todd was magnificent because you could just feel the tension there. You could feel his disapproval. And that whole line he gives was the best line. I was one of my favorite lines when he says, he says, if I was offended, I would have killed you for offering a suggestion or something
Yeah.
like that. That
You
was
know,
classic.
just to and to add to that as well, what I like about Tony Todd and this group of actors that joined in for this episode is I have a natural tendency as a, as like a big nerd and I definitely I have my moments where I nitpick things. I can't help it. I'm a nitpicker. I'm like, hey, this guy, whatever. My first thought oftentimes is something to the effect of, this guy's not really acting like a Klingon, or that's not how Klingons act. And I remember it's a planet, it's an empire. They act differently. I don't act the same as somebody from Alabama, probably. Lucky for them. But so then I realized, wow, what they're actually doing is they're expanding our view and our knowledge of Klingons. And then I start to realize how much I enjoy their interpretation as actors of Klingons, that they're not doing an impression of a previous Klingon. They're not doing an impression of Worf. They're not doing an impression of General Worf from whatever it was, Star Trek 6 or I don't remember. They're not doing these impressions, or General Chang, or Koloth or Kor, or anyway. The point is they're creating their own character. They're creating their own Klingon, their own version of it. And I think it's great. And these guys all did a great job, including the old lady that had like 4 lines and nothing more, but even she really brought it,
I thought she was a great guest star as well. That whole line where she just keeps repeating, "I am dead" to Picard. I'm dead. You could feel that she lost a part of herself in that accident. And that she's never been the same, and she's tried to bury that side of her life. There was a lot of undertone there in her performance. I thought she was great as a K-list was her character name. Even she had that one line where she says, "You're still fat." It was just like she was great for her guest star. My Also, one of my favorites was the one who played this Klingon High Council, the Kim Peck actor. I thought the scene where he takes Worf to the side and just basically says, "Hey man, just let it go, and nobody will disrespect you or look down on you if you don't show up tomorrow," or something like that. There was a genuine connection there. I felt real sympathy, he was really talking to him in a heart to heart kind of way, I felt. And it seemed authentic. And I loved the performance that the actor gave in that particular kind of heart to heart moment that he gave with Worf. I thought it was great.
Yeah, his name is Charles Cooper, and he was also in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. He played Cord. 2 R's in that name, Cord. So he's definitely an older actor. Man, he was born in 1926 in San Francisco. A very accomplished actor there. So
Yeah.
now back to this episode here. This was there were a lot of really heavy implications here where they're saying, I mean, the main thing is, Worf, you are the fall guy to keep the Empire together. Now we don't know that right away. Actually, before we get to that, do you think, because I thought of this at the very end, do you think that maybe we could have cut out some of the beginning of Kurn pretending not to know Worf and all this stuff and expanding the Klingon planet stuff? Because at the end, I realized we didn't really need those extra few scenes of Kurn messing with people. Like, I thought he was going to come on, because I vaguely remembered it. He was going to come on, and at the very first commercial, the teaser thing, he was going to come on, and then he was going to say, your new commander, and then, Mr. Worf, is everything all right? Do you know him, Mr. Wolf? That is my brother, Kern. And then commercial, or Kern would say it or something. And then we jump over. But they did all this extra stuff. I guess it works. It was cool. It was fine. But I just couldn't help but wonder if we could have had more, use these sets more and use these actors more and just kind of immerse ourselves more into the Klingon homeworld.
Yes. Yes, but I guess I would say they were trying to take us and throw us for a loop and have us like, the goal was, you think it's going this way, and then boom, it makes this right turn. And I guess they did accomplish that, because when he first comes on, I didn't know he was just the brother, right? So that's one, loop they throw us for. And then you don't know that he's the brother, and he's also there to tell Worf about, the father being accused as a traitor. So that's good writing for me, because I don't want to know where the story is going. I like that they also piggybacked on the fact that we had previously seen Riker on the Klingon ship a few episodes, or last season, I think, where he was on board that Klingon ship and had to take control and command of that ship when it was necessary. So that's also a good callback, writing wise. Like, hey, remember that episode we watched? This is the reverse of that. Instead of Riker being the exchange student, person, it's now we're returning the favor and taking in Klingon exchange student. But it did seem what did seem unusual to me, and I'm sure this would have seemed unusual as well in the episode that we saw with Riker, was you're going to let some Klingon exchange student be the number one in command? Like he's like, I can understand being like somewhere like the number 3 or lower.
Well, he was number 2, just like Riker was on their ship.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So that was pretty like, hefty.
So he's the number 1, right?
Yeah.
Riker's the number 1 essentially after the captain.
Yeah, you're right.
So he's basically put into the number 1 role, which to me is a little bit too much, like just handing over your stealth jet over to your adversary, or I don't know about that. I think it's a little bit too much power to give to an exchange student, but for the sake of the story, I guess it made some sense, because it did show he was running a really a tight ship. You see, Wesley was sitting up straight, like he didn't want to even arch his back around the
Yeah, and did you see how he called out West, but not Data? They were both snickerdoodling together. They're both like, tee-hee, look at the Klingon. His boots are stinky, aren't they? Oh, and then they pull away, and he's like, Wesley! And Data's like, oh, I'm just sitting here scanning for life forms, making a life form song. No big deal. Doing my own thing. Sorry, Wes.
And Wesley's like, I'm just sitting up straight. I'm not doing anything bad. Yeah. I mean, it was funny. And then I didn't even get the whole asteroid back and forth between Kern and Worf, where he's like, so then we didn't need to avoid the asteroids, did we? It was like, and then Worf gets all mad, like, like, come on, I didn't get that little exchange. To me, they would be more blunt and direct as Klingons. If there was some beef between them, they would just say, why are you pressing the buttons like that? You pants, are you soft? Something direct.
Yeah. Well, hey,
I guess we didn't have to avoid the asteroids. It was a very come on, it was a soft comeback for a Klingon.
For a Klingon, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that more for sure. Let's jump into our break, because I want to make fun of Wes too. No, I'm just kidding. Kind of. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Oh, by the way, I'm wearing a very special Even Year shirt for those of you listening in. It's a black shirt with orange text that says Even Year. If you know, it's sports related. And here are the trivioids of the week. Captain Picard asks Kern to take the Enterprise to the outer cometary cloud. Snicker, snicker. If a Klingon feels patronized, you'll know. Commander Kern doesn't seem to like Wesley. The engineers are going to be running double shifts just to get ready for the next inspection. I liked when Geordi was whining to him. Geordi is so good at that, of being like, Commander, he's being unreasonable.
Yes.
Klingons believe in obedience and a strict formality of command. Kern has heard of Federation burned replicated bird meat. Counselor Troy giggles at the thought of Riker being killed. That was weird. Kern was barely a year old when Worf left for the Khitomer outpost. Captain Picard gives the very first F around and find out. Kahlest resides in the old quarters of the first city. Actually, Kahlest recently opened up a shoe store, so it's good for her. She's about that. Anyway, so the rest of the, as we were saying with like how like the banter that was going on there, it was really interesting how to a Klingon being overly nice to another Klingon is like the biggest disrespect, like worse than he's yelling at people, he's insulting people, but being like, very good, Worf. That's where he's like, oh man, if he calls me boss or big guy, it's over. It's curtains for him.
Yeah, that pissed him off so much. You can see him grumbling and like, I guess we didn't have to avoid the asteroids, did we? That was just so. I was like, oh god, that's a soft comeback. I was laughing when Worf kind of walks into the Klingon hallways and just says, "I am Worf, son of Mog." And it's like, bro, who cares? Like, so he just walk into a building and just announcement, "I'm here." They're like,
they were yelling a lot. There was a lot of. I was like, you guys have bad acoustics? What's going on? Why are you guys yelling so? But of course, it's because Klingons they want to act like tough and loud. But on that note, I didn't notice how dark it was in the Klingon homeworld until they beamed back to the Enterprise. And it was like the brightness that was like a punch in the face. I was like, whoa, like the dichotomy of bright blues and colors and grays and whites. And then we come back to it and it's like dark and reds. And I also thought the red was really interesting because I imagine like walking around and it's just dark. And you're just seeing these bright reds almost kind of halfway blinding you or making it difficult. I feel like it would always kind of subconsciously keep you on edge, keep you a little annoyed, keep you a little uncertain of what, you know what I mean? Because reds will do that. That's why they use like, red light, to stop you. And it stands out the most. And having something that stands out the most in a dark spot, I don't know, it just felt very like edgy or combative, or like it doesn't let people be comfortable. It doesn't let people relax. It keeps them kind of on edge. And I thought that was a good choice.
Yeah. I mean, there are certain predators that hunt in the night and they prefer the cover of darkness, that gives
like
them
vampires.
The advantage. Like vampires, yes. And
and you're like, and also animals. Some real things.
Yeah, and some real things too. But yeah, that could also be a good explanation to why the Klingons like it so dark. It keeps their heightened senses heightened. It keeps that instinct of predatory, vibe going for them. So that's why they're always on edge. They're always ready to fight. Kudos to Picard for fearlessly going into the area, wherever that area was where Kahlest was, because he did get run up on by 2 or 3 different Klingons and was able to defend himself,
Good thing Grandma was protecting him. Nurse Grandma, otherwise he'd be in trouble.
She wedged that knife pretty far deep into that dude's spine. I was like, well, she still got some thrust left in her.
Yeah, I mean, I will say Picard, when Picard first threw a guy down by the leg, I was like, I'm watching that other guy. If he doesn't get up, I'm going to be very disappointed. Because sometimes in Star Trek and other shows, like they're like, they vanquished their foe by throwing them to the ground. And I'm like, no, but luckily he did come back up and, came with the knife. But I
Yeah.
was definitely watching that. That must have been good stunt coordination by our good buddy, Dennis Matalone. So
Dennis.
big
Yeah.
kudos to him. I enjoyed the little fight scene and I enjoyed Klingon Graham. What was her name? Kaylest. Um,
Kalis, yeah.
I enjoyed her, kind of saving the day. And then that was pretty cool. She was a good character.
And you also mentioned Geordie LaForge for a minute, because he does have that kind of, he knows how to whine in a technical way. Like, there's
Yes.
just too many man hours. It's just not enough microchip processing power for me to be able to.
And he says it like, it's too many Verners in the Comcast.
Yes,
Who knows?
yes. My router will never accept that much bandwidth. But he's so good at that it's just like, uh it resonates so much the way he does it. It's like, come on, this is not even fair. Like, what do you want me to do?
Exactly. He's so good. He's the best. He's the best
He
at it.
forced Riker to even confront him, confront Kern, which was a kind of looked like he was a little fearful of it, like, hey, do you mind if I talk to you a little bit? It's just like, bro, this is your ship. You're the number one, and you're scared to talk to this guy. Talk to him.
Well, that's the thing is with someone like Kern, you got to get on his side by being like, "Hey, I love your guava nectar, bro." Like warm him up, and you'll be like, "Oh, thank you. Have you tried the pineapple?" "Oh no, but maybe I will soon." That sounds great. "Hey, can you go
By the
easy
way,
on the office?" Yeah. Now that we're pals, you know.
yeah, yeah, just
There
throw
was
the old guava nectar line. That'll work.
yum. There was one
uh,
moment that I thought was really cute in a very good way was when Worf says he wants Picard to be his replacement, Chadich. And, Picard was kind of like, oh, I better not. You should blah, 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 and he says, no, you are the best for the job or whatever it was that he says. Picard responds in Klingon. And I'm like,
yeah.
that is such a good moment because it shows that, he's done his homework, that he cares, that he respects the culture enough to do his research. And then it gives Worf the feeling of knowing, hey, this guy is the right guy for the job. He's gone above and
Mhm.
beyond. He's done all this preparation just in case. I mean, and it shows, him being thoughtful and thorough and respectful of his culture. And I thought that was maybe what I thought was the best moment. It was really good.
Yes, I like that moment too, which is in alignment with what Picard says earlier in the episode. He has a line of when he's describing Starfleet, and he says, "One of the aims is to learn tolerance." And I felt like that was a good display of the tolerance that he had learned.
Hmm.
Um, Even towards the end, when Worf basically shuts Picard down, Picard makes, he's like, all right, this can't happen. You can't kill him. And Worf kind of takes a step forward and says, that's enough. He's talking to him now as his Chadich, and he's telling him, I'm going to make the decision to discommodate or discommodation or something to
Right.
that effect.
Mhm.
But it was basically saying, I heard what you have to say. I appreciate you, but now this is where my cultural values are going to supersede even your authority as the captain to make a
Mhm.
decision in this scenario. I'm going
Right.
to make my ultimate decision. And I thought that was another kind of respect for culture. The captain taking a step back now as captain and being more a friend and a confidant for Worf. So the whole dichotomy of stepping up as a captain and then also stepping back away from it and saying, I respect your decision. And if this is what you want to do, I will honor it. So I thought that was another, way that you portray a captain in a positive light, also respectful of the Klingon culture as you were describing.
That's a really good point because I thought Sure, that makes sense that Worf is like, okay, they laid the groundwork, which is like, on the ship, you're my captain. On the planet in front of the High Council, you are my Chadich. You're my Chabich. And so you do what I say, right? So, okay, so that works. I get it. But you're right. Looking at it from the captain's point of view, it's very different because he's saying, sure, I will follow along with your cultures, but, he's willing to put his foot down to the High Council and say, sorry, I respect your cultures, but you're not going to kill my officer. But when his officer says it, when his officer says, stand down, he does. He does respect Worf and his beliefs and his feelings and his culture enough for that to supersede everything. When remember the High Council did not supersede. He said no to them, but to Worf he says, "Okay, I'll stand back and be your Chabich." And that's a really good point. I didn't really think of it from his point of view.
Yeah, it's a good step back for in that moment. I wrote down here, Chadich better have my money.
Chadiches ain't nothing but hoes and tricks. No.
Yeah. I also liked when Worf got mad and he realized that Duras was the real traitor or son of a traitor.
Right.
And he says, this hobby dash should be fed to the dogs. And I love when he had that moment because he was like, wait a minute, you've been talking about me this whole time. It's you.
Right. And I think we were kind of led to believe that it might have been Kempek, the leader or whatever.
Yes.
Like I remember kind of thinking that. But then when I heard the name Duras, you'll remember the name Duras. It'll come back in Star Trek. But yeah, that was, and Worf was like, Duras is mine, buddy.
Yeah, he was a Duras hole. But didn't we hear about the Duras sisters? I thought they came back. Okay, so yes, I do remember Duras. I felt like it was an emotional moment for me when Worf got stripped down and slapped by Duras in that moment. I felt a humility there for Worf. I felt like he was being stripped down and kind of humiliated in front of people. I felt that emotion, but I also felt, and this is why I feel like this episode is so great, and I want to commend both Ronald Moore and W. Reed Moran because this is now 2 episodes in a row where I felt an emotion, an emotional tear kind of came to my eye at the end of this episode. And I couldn't help it. I wasn't looking at this episode saying, oh, this is going to be. And by the way, this is a great character episode. This was a great dive into, Worf. We've gotten a lot of good Data episodes. We're finally getting a really good Worf episode. I hope to see a really good Geordi episode because I don't like the little dating scene episode they gave us so far.
They're like, we gave you a Geordi episode. I said a good one.
Yes, a good one. But this is a good episode. And the moment that got me like, where I was like, wait a minute, I actually feel something, which is a rare thing, but I felt like I was actually feeling some emotions watching this episode. Because at the end, when everybody's turning their back on Worf and he looks over at his brother and he says, you must also, brother. The way he says it and the way he looks at him, I was like, whoa. I actually felt a little teardrop forming out in the corner of my eye, and I thought, this is good television. This is good writing.
Yeah, me too. Like that's one of the few things that will get me is like brothers. I have a brother myself, and I'm like, whatever. I don't care. I see it. Sometimes we'll see something like on the news where some dude obviously committed the heinous crime or whatever, and people are saying like, why is that guy's brother standing behind him saying he didn't do it in the face of he obviously did it? It's because, man, like that's your guy, man. That's like, I get it. I understand it, Not saying my brother would ever do anything like that, but if he did, I'd be looking like an idiot too. I'd be standing by him. But anyway, so
Yeah.
We're almost out of time here, but I also thought another moment that was really great was just at the very end, right after that, when Worf and Picard walk out together, just the two of them, and
Mhm.
Worf has basically given up his roots. He has said, I'm saving the Klingon Empire by turning my back on the Klingon Empire and having them all believe forever that I'm a traitor and my family is disgraced forever, which is just the worst. And he and Picard walk out together, and and I put in my notes, a bond is made between them. Like I feel like right there and then there's like this forever bond where Worf will forever appreciate and stick by and be loyal to Picard, and Picard will forever respect the hell out of Worf. And I feel like that was a moment for the two of them that are linking them forever, I think.
Yeah, I felt the same thing, and what it essentially was is that Worf has now chosen his new family. He's no
Totally.
longer accepted in the Klingon Empire. They have turned their back on him, literally, and figuratively. So that's it. He's an outcast, and Picard is witness firsthand to the reasoning behind it. Right? It's like, wow, this guy did it because of uh, he's actually saving his ancestry. He's actually has the courage to uh, take on this title, even though it's untrue. And he's willing to swallow all that and wear that on his shoulders and move forward and just be a man who stands on his own merit by himself without the backing of an empire. So I thought that's a big moment. And yes, I felt the same kind of camaraderie between Picard and
Yeah.
Worf. I felt like they definitely bonded from this moment. And finally we got like I said, a good Worf character building episode. Kudos to the set designers for coming up with a very nice, believable Klingon world. I felt like I was there. Um, and yeah, and I enjoyed this episode.
Me too, all around. Home run of the day, though. It's time for the home run of the episode. What do you think? It's a
Hmm.
toughie.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to give the home run to Michael Dorn. I don't think I get a chance to honor him with a home run as many times as I can. So since I have the opportunity now, Michael Dorn will get the home run of the day. Of course, it's a very close second for me with Tony Todd as the guest star, who I thought also brought out a lot of the good
Hmm.
performances from Michael Dorn. But I'm going to give it to Worf. I think Worf has some really great moments. I like when he asked the captain to be his Chadish. I like when he confronts his brother and says, your deception offends me, and all of those moments were really good. I thought he carried a lot of the scenes, and there was a chance for us to see Worf's acting chops because he usually only has a funny line here or there. This was actually him giving us a sample of his acting chops, and I was entertained. So, Michael
Hmm.
Dorn, home run.
I think the home run for me is going to be Ronald D. Moore and W. Reed Moran for giving us something good with which to work. But, it was
Yeah,
great. Great stuff, great lines, great dialogue. But to your point, they can
yeah,
write something well, but unless the actor delivers it right, it's going to kind of fall flat. And of course, Worf was great, and so were all the others. And the fact that he and the others were able to do this is just going to only encourage the writers to write more Worf episodes, things like that. So
yeah.
great, great stuff all around. Here is some more great stuff. It's a couple dozen names, and they are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Titus Mohler, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anil O. Polat,
Mhm.
Joe Balsarotti, Mike Goo, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, The Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie Manasfi, Marcia Classic Schreier, Greg K. Wickstrom out in beautiful Hawaii, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, and of course, the original Klingon himself, Jason Okun. All right, everybody, stick around. We will be right back with the free-for-all on the Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule. This is the free-for-all, of course. Look who has joined us, Melissa Longo, in her Lower Decks shirt.
Lower Decks, Lower Decks.
Jason M. Okun is here. He's going to drop some knowledge, I bet. Mai is live in Tokyo with a cool sweater from the Introverted Republic. Chris McGee, wow, look at that. Looks like same color almost as Mai's, and he got a cool shirt from our Seventh Rule online store. Go ahead and click on that in the link below, and you can get your very own shirt of any color and design there. Faith Howell is also here. Great background. Carrie Schwent is here, sporting the Cubbies. Allyson.
Cubbies?
That's right. Allyson Leach-Heid is also here, waving away. And the Matt Boardman with his cool family shirt. He knows what's up. Let's get into this, shall we? I caught a couple non-appearance mentions. What about you guys?
Couple.
Wisdom.
The Rozhenkos.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
No, he said our parents, but we've never seen Worf's Klingon parents, and they did not mention their Earth parents, right?
Well, wasn't the person who rescued him his adoptive father, or no?
Yes, but I don't.
He did mention
right.
He did mention
the person that rescued him, and that would be his adoptive
his dad,
father,
right?
So we got the one. That's a lot of work. Anyway, Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
We'll say like 8.4.
8.4. Does anybody else have a guess that doesn't already know?
Go 8.8.
Whoa.
Well, this
right.
is one of those episodes that was when they did a Blu-ray release of the episodes that they were remastering, when they did TNG Remastered. This was one of the episodes that they included. So I think I read that it was number 7 on the top 10 list of favorite TNG episodes. So
it could be that. I mean, 8 is enough, but yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Fantastic. Real quick, Matt, in the remaster, I noticed toward the end when it showed like an establishing shot of that cool cityscape, at the High Council, I saw people walking around in there. I was like, I can't imagine they did that back in 1990. You think they must have added that, right?
It depends. I know that there was one that was remastered that they may have, but surprisingly, there were a lot of little tricks that they did back then that I guess we didn't notice before, but once they cleaned it up, you kind of see some of those animated tricks.
Cool.
My
The
TV
answer
was
is
probably too small to see that 30 years ago.
maybe that's why.
Exactly.
Well, if they've redone the matte paintings, they had to do something with that. I mean, they would have had to animate everything else. I mean, or just improve it or match it.
Yeah.
Mr. Boardman, your first name, Matt, doesn't have an E at the end, does it? Just checking.
No, but it is an unfortunate name to have as a visual effects artist.
That's true. Things can get complicated thematically, that is. So the IMDb score is
Let's just gloss over that, though. Sorry.
Very good. 8.2 is the answer. 8.2, very high score, but not quite the 8.8. Some kinds of or some sorts of? Chris McGee always knows.
I didn't hear any.
Me neither.
Not even the some kind of caviar? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Melissa, leave the jokes to Matt, please. All right. Please get us started on the right track. Melissa Longo, thank you.
Okay, I'll try. Well, I found this episode very interesting, and I love reading about episodes after I watch them because then they give me a whole different appreciation for what I've just watched and then what I'm about to watch again to apply that stuff. But what I took away mostly, I was reading on IMDb, and in the trivia section, it gave a quote from Michael Dorn explaining how this episode impacted him and his approach to Worf. And I love his take on it because it is kind of the laying of the groundwork for diving deep into Klingon culture and Klingon politics and Klingon tradition. And what he talked about mostly was loyalty and honor and how he applied that to Worf. And I love that. And I love Michael Dorn's commitment to Worf. I mean, he was committed to Worf before this episode, but how his perspective changed on approaching Worf. And I love that because Worf has become one of my favorite characters in all of Star Trek. And he's not perfect. And I get mad at him because of the way he treats Alexander. And, you know, but he's still a well-rounded person. He's somebody that I'm always interested in, and there's always something going on, and he's always trying to improve himself as well. So I think this episode is a very good jumping off point for all of that work that is about to come.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Thank you very much, Melissa Longo, in the Lower Decks shirt. Jason M. Okun, what did you think of this episode?
Well, it's always been one of my favorites, and obviously it's certainly ranked highly among all the Next Gen episodes. It's kind of amazing what gets crammed in, if you will, into an hour of television. It almost seems like you're watching something that should be 2 or 3 hours long. I mean, no wonder. I mean, there are two different stories that get combined, and you actually get the tone of the episode change from something that's kind of lighthearted, and there's a lot of humor in the first half of the episode, and it turns really, really serious toward the middle. In the end, you basically have a little bit of humor, and then you have some political intrigue and a courtroom drama at the end as well. So you get a lot of different things happening. It's a wonderful looking episode. And certainly, you know, the people talk about the Klingon Hall. I believe they used the French reverse to film it to give it a little bit more scope. It deals with characters, certainly gives us the Klingon culture. It gives us a lot more Worf. Everybody's involved. It's a wonderful hour of television that not only entertains but plants seeds for things we're going to see years down the road. It's one of the best examples of season 3 of Next Gen in the series altogether. There's a lot more to say. Obviously, there are nitpicks here and there, and I'll save that for later. But overall, it's one of the best episodes of Next Gen.
Wow. High praise. Love it.
Mm.
All right. Up next, Mai is live in Tokyo. What's up, Mai? Welcome back. What'd you think of this one?
This is without a doubt, and I agree with Jason. The hour could be 2 to 3 hours. This is an epic episode. There's no doubt about it. It ticks all of the boxes so very well in that respect. It's even hard to dislike Picard in this one, although I'm pretty sure he would have gotten bitch slapped if Duras had pushed it. Worf shows great growth as an individual in this episode. He not only talks the talk, but he walks the walk of the value of the good of the many outweighs the good of the one. And I think it's possible because his culture stretches so far back, and he applies the logic that it will do so into the future as well. I like that a lot. The title is yet again biblical in nature, taking this time from what Moses wrote in Numbers 14:19, where he talks about the Lord visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation. That's a long grudge to hold. Holy cow. As a parent, though, I find this concept preposterous. I mean, what good is it for a parent to learn from their mistakes or the mistakes of their parents if the children don't benefit, right? So to paraphrase the monologue in Amistad, they are a sole reason for existing. And I mean, take, for example, corporal punishment. My grandparents beat their kids. My parents passed that on to me. But I am proud to say that my kids, now 23 and 28, have only ever had to endure an embarrassing hug in front of their friends. I took punishment to a whole new level and learned that a temporary change of the Wi-Fi password was way more effective for this generation. So a small tip of the hat to fathers and mothers alike who've taken their parents' sins and turned them on their head to produce unburdened kids.
Thank you very much, Mai. Everybody, Mai knows that an embarrassing hug from a parent is way worse than anything else. It's so powerful. Thanks very much, Mai. Chris McGee is coming in from Cincinnati. What's up? What'd you think of this one?
Oh my goodness. Well, like everyone else, I think it's definitely one of my favorites. It's our first visit to the Klingon homeworld here in this show, and it's a humdinger. I mean, we get a couple of exceptionally notable new characters that are introduced here. For one, it's great to see Tony Todd in his first appearance as Worf's brother Kurn. And we're introduced to Duras. I won't spoil anything, but rest assured this isn't the last time we'll see or hear of him. With the most, as Jason had mentioned, there seems to be kind of like two storylines going on here. And with the most memorable part of the episode, for me anyway, taking place in the second half, Worf refuting the accusations against his father in front of the Klingon High Council, it's easy for me to largely forget the first half with that officer exchange program and Kern's introduction. I am very impressed with the unexpected ending of the episode, especially for its time. The writer would make such a bold choice by not having a happy ending of sorts, or everything's nicely resolved and everyone's happy at the end, and taking such a bold step towards serialization, even if it's a relatively small step. Worf accepting this commendation will be referenced several times later, and this episode kind of begins a plot line, it definitely begins a plot line that continues for years, even into the stretching on into the first TNG movie, Star Trek Generations. So look forward to that. Memorable quote of the episode, kind of an unconventional one, but I love it. And that is, "I shall try some of your burned replicated bird meat."
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chris McGee. All right, Faith Howell, how have you been? What did you think of this one?
I think this is one of my favorites too. It's just watching it now, it's got such good, just technically a good episode. We've got touch points from previous episodes with Riker's time on the Klingon ship. And, so it pulls back the history, it builds out the Klingon culture a lot. It also has great character development for Worf for sure, but some of our other characters. It's also it was interesting to see Kurn come in and how he related to the different characters and how he jumped on the Starfleet staff, but babied Worf a little bit, but he really was pushing everybody's buttons, which I thought was an interesting social dynamic that we maybe wouldn't have been aware of without that. It was kind of nice to meet Worf's nurse, because my son has a nurse that takes care of him, so it's nice to know, and two, maybe does that speak to Worf as a status, because back in the day, it would have been like royalty that had that sort of caregiver. So perhaps, Worf's family is more on the royal side, more than we necessarily think of. So just a lot of interesting points that I could probably talk about for 30 minutes. But
Worf the Nobleman.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Faith Howell. All right, Carrie Schwent, you love baseball, but what did you think of this episode?
Yes, I do. Huge Cubs fan, and yes, I do love this episode. It's fantastic. I too think it probably could have been easily a two-parter, sort of string along him messing with the crew some more. Maybe drip in the brother thing like right before the final commercial break, and then that last act set up the whole everything that happens on Kronos. But that's me, mentally rewriting things. And like Melissa, I love doing research on the episodes, and I found out a couple of fun facts that I'll both through here quick. So when on the screen when they showed the name of the captain of the Intrepid, that name is the person who wrote the original spec script. So I thought that was very, very cool. It's very much kind of a blink and you miss it. The actress who played the nurse, I found out she performed as a comedian on the Ed Sullivan Show back in 1963, and I thought that was really neat. I can for some of the way her line delivery, I can see her as a comedian. And the actor who plays Duras co-wrote the script for Angelina Jolie's first Tomb Raider movie, and I love the Tomb Raider movies.
Whoa.
Apparently, he didn't do a ton of acting. Has done a lot of producing over the years. Now, when something that really made me laugh when they're sitting at dinner and Troy's asking him how he's doing, and he tells Troy that he had to restrain himself from killing Commander Riker. My head canon tells me that the laugh that she has is the laugh of a look that says, "Yeah, I've thought about doing that to Riker more than a few times over the years." I absolutely believe that's what she was thinking. Love Tony Todd. He has been in some of my favorite horror movies, like the Final Destination, Candyman. Love that guy. He's got just one of the best voices. And I looked it up. He hasn't read any audiobooks. I would buy whatever audiobook it was if he were to read one. And so speaking of the dinner, my inspiration for this week's limerick is what I think might be Kern's inner monologue as he's sitting there, trying to choke down this human food. These humans are soft and weak and lazy. Their food is so bland it drives me crazy. But I came for a reason. Father's branded with treason. I must now tell Worf something amazing.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear. All right, look who's next. It's Allyson Leach-Heid. What is up, Allyson? What did you think of this particular episode?
I will join with everyone in sounding like a broken record. Love the episode. It's a ton of fun, and then it gets really serious. And I love having highs and lows in episodes. Like you think you're going one way, and then boom, we're going another. And yes, it could have been 2 episodes. It was originally 2 different episodes that they put together. So that can definitely be why we feel that. I also love Tony Todd in this. I'm so happy he plays Kern, and we get to see him more times than just this once. And I love that he's like completely trolling Worf the entire time. It is so much fun. Like he's treating him like a baby. Like, oh, you did such a good job. And yeah, Worf is just like, I'm going to kill you. Like, what are you doing? And siblings are like that, even apparently when they've never really hung out together. So I enjoyed that a lot. The line from Picard towards the end to Kern saying, "Don't you forget what he's doing for you today," makes me sad because that's what happens in Deep Space Nine. Kern loses his memories. I'm like, no. Oh, I'm sad about that. So that's also an interesting tie-in that way. And yeah, I think I'll cut it there, but Chris already got my favorite line. Love it. So I will go for my second favorite, which was Picard. "You may test that assumption at your convenience." So and we do. And it actually goes pretty well for Picard. Oh, one more thing. Kahlest, the look on her face after she throws the dagger and like her position and just like, I'm like, yes, loved that. Giving her a moment of power at the end. I thought that was super cool.
Great stuff. Thank you very much for that. Allyson Leach-Heid. The Matt Boardman is here, everybody. What do you think he's got to say? What do you think of this one?
Oh, it's always a great watch. Absolutely love it every single time. It's got so many cool layers to it. And I mean, I love episodes where we get to learn more about Klingon culture. And honestly, I think maybe this is unfair to say, but in my opinion, nobody does Klingon culture better than Ron Moore. Like anytime he writes an episode that is Klingon culture, it's like, oh my gosh, this is just, he like just gets it. There's an episode in Voyager, I think it's 6th season, Barge of the Dead. And it was the only episode that Ron wrote for Voyager. And I'm watching this, I'm like, oh man, this feels familiar and it's cool. And it's like, it's totally speaking to me. And then I get to the end, and it was written by Ron Moore. So I absolutely love it. I love that we get moments of seriousness, we get moments of humor. I love that Kalish is like, when talking about Kempek, she's like, he was fat, and then they get to the end of it, and he's like, well, it's good to see you, because he's like, hey, how you doing? Been a long time. And she looks at him and she says, you're still fat. Just like kind of that zinger. And then Allyson quoted one of my favorite, the Picard F around and find out moment. It's just like, oh, it's so great. Love that this episode won an Emmy for best art direction. I agree with it. I think the Klingon Hall is fantastic. The exteriors, we get another great Sid Dutton, great matte paintings there. And like Chris said, that ending that is such a powerful ending to me. Like I just thought it was so cool that they made the choice to just let the camera hang there with everybody having their backs turned, and then Worf and Picard walk off, and then we fade to black. Just so many good things. This is, like one of those where it's just like lightning struck, and they did their best to capture every amount of that magic in this episode.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matt Boardman. That's the Matt Boardman, everybody. But now it's time for Jake's final take.
Yeah, I love this episode like everyone else. I felt myself feeling emotional about the moment at the end, the climax. I did feel some type of way, which is, means I've come a long way, caring about these characters and this world that they built for me here. So I have to say they did tug on a few heartstrings in this episode. I thought the acting was great. The guest stars were amazing in this episode. I did love Kempek, the High Council. I thought he was really good as the kind of overlord leader. I also liked the music in this episode, which kind of stuck out to me really towards the end when the final notes were hitting and it was culminating, and it felt like it was in alignment with the way I was feeling at the time. So the music was in synchronicity with my emotions. I also am reminded, just as a side, how much I love JG being a Klingon, because I often look for him in moments like, where's JG at? He's not in the episode, but I'm looking for him. So that's how much of an impact he's left in my mind. And then the last thing is, one of the things that I really like about this episode is it does what I believe Deep Space Nine does very well, and that is present a not so pure version of the world in which you live in, and it kind of shows little bits of flaws in the exterior, illusion of government and how government functions, and particularly in this case, how the Klingon Empire and their governance was going to be based on this deception, on this illusion that is conspired at these high levels. And so the illusion is more important than the reality in order to keep this thing going. And so it just lets me know about certain other decisions that are made in the world, and how what we believe to be true or perceive to be true may not always be the case and what it is. So I believe that tackling that, or even just getting into that subject matter for the writers, shows how clever they are at thinking about these kinds of things, and how they too question whatever narratives exist in the world. So I think that's a sign of clever writing. Definitely had Ron Moore written all over it because of the dialogue. Found myself writing a lot of the dialogue. And yeah, so this was a great episode. Great for character building. I wish each character gets an episode that they can shine to this degree, because these are the kinds of episodes that I want to see more for Geordi's character, and for Troy's character. I want to see them have more character building episodes. So that's my final take.
All right. Good stuff, everybody. What a fun episode that was. All right. Thank you all very much for hanging out with us. Thank you to Matt, Allyson, Carrie, Faith, Chris, Mai, Jason, and Melissa. For myself, Cirroc, Aaron Eisenberg, and Melissa Longo. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. We really appreciate it. We will see you next time. And until then, always remember the 7th rule.